What's the difference between augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality? It is a range of experiences. On one hand, we have virtual reality, which is a total immersive experience where you put on a headset and you are disconnected from your environment. Everything you see and interact is a 3D generated object. And on the other hand, for augmented reality, you have a connection to your environment, like in HoloLens, and you have some extra information, maybe 3D or maybe audio information that's available to you, which is augmenting your reality. Also, we have mobile phone applications like Pokemon Go. You are looking through the glass of your phone and you're able to find 3D objects in the real world. And this whole range of experiences we call mixed reality. And short, it's called XR.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this, what's going to be an awesome session for the Global XR Conference. I am incredibly pleased to moderate this session, which will be given by Adrian Hatch, who is the CEO of IMAJION. And we are going to get into some, I think, really awesome applications of XR for the construction and trade and extreme environment space. So, Adrian.
Thanks a lot, Ruthie.
Welcome.
Yes.
So I think it would be awesome before you get started with your presentation, if you're not already planning on doing so, just to share a little bit more about your background in the company, just to give everybody a little bit of context.
Absolutely. So I got started with XR in 2016. That was with the Oculus Rift dev kit. And I remember trying it on and thinking, gosh, this could give me a headache, but at the same time, there's clearly something coming around the pipe here. There's something new. And got together with a few folks and put our heads together on what are some problems that couldn't be solved by this kind of computer that could be solved by a headset computer or by whatever this new kind of computer that's coming out is. And that brought us to the challenge of the construction site meeting. You know, we're taking it for granted that this conference doesn't have to be held in person, but all around the world right now, there are meetings being held physically on construction sites because the opposite is taken for granted, that you have to be there in person to get the job done. So we looked at 3D augmented reality, this tool that lets you see your surrounding space, bring 3D data into the space, and with our technology, stream that view interactively to everyone else on your team. And we use that to provide a digital space to hold these site meetings. So over the last 4 years, as we've been building this, we've seen a lot of other tech emerging, and it's really exciting to get to talk about that today.
All right. Well, I'd have to say then, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run off this screen here and leave you to it. I'm excited. I cannot wait to see your presentation today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much, Ruthie. And thank you, everybody watching. I'm excited to hear all the Q&A we've got at the end here. I think this will take about 30 to 40 minutes, so we should have plenty of time for a good conversation at the end.
All right.
Here, let me fire up a screen share here, which is always the most interesting part of using a new streaming platform. All right, so here you go. Title of the presentation, as you folks might have expected. Today we're talking about how 3D augmented reality brings computing to the job site, trades, and extreme environments. There's me at the bottom left. I'll skip my own intro. You just heard it. Now, I think we had a great 5-minute dev question leading into this session because that was talking about the split between the different kinds of mixed reality between VR and AR. And for this presentation, I've actually split things again. I've introduced this idea that there's 3D augmented reality, that we've got this first wave of AR that you might have seen with Google Glass, or as I'll get into it, even something like Google Maps. But today we've got this new hardware and software coming out that and has really been out that gives augmented reality these greater powers, this ability to see and understand the space around us in 3 dimensions. And our thesis when we started IMAJION was that this is the tech that really brings the computer to the job site, to the extreme environment, like an oil rig or a shipping container ship. And so today I'd like to overview what brought us to that conclusion, why AR matters for construction, field work, facility management, the kinds of places that you would consider an extreme environment for a laptop computer, the toolbox that makes 3D augmented reality. What does that give us that we don't get out of Google Glass, that you don't have on an iPhone 10? I've got a couple case studies on how folks are putting that toolbox to work right now, some products that you could go out and demo or buy right after this presentation, as well as some stuff that's coming around tomorrow, both from some cool teams developing new features and ideas, and maybe from you in the audience. Not to mention, there's a whole lot of workshops following this one about the tools that you can use to build 3D AR experiences. And last up, how are we going to do that? How do we empower ourselves using this 3D AR revolution? How do we become a part of it, whether that's by driving the adoption of this new tooling and technology ourselves at our own organizations or in our own professional communities, or building something ourselves, or some combination of the two. So I figured I'd start off with a quick overview on what AR looks like so I can apply that to construction, IoT, etc. And I will let you folks know up front, like I said early on, my main expertise is in construction. That's what IMAJION has been focused on. I've spent a lot of time on job sites introducing folks to construction products. So some of this might focus a lot on construction use cases. You might notice my mindset is often on the job site more than the oil rig or the manufacturing facility. But the same use cases, the same challenges that apply in that built environment also apply to the extreme environment like a facility or an oil rig. And one reason I'm excited to give this presentation today is because hardware keeps becoming more and more suitable to those environments. There's support to use the HoloLens 2 on a container ship now. There are devices coming out from RealWare, well suited to environments like oil rigs. So I'm excited for an audience like the folks here today to get to tap into that new hardware, new capabilities, and continue bringing AR, continue bringing the computer to new places. And that's what advancement in computing hardware has looked like for over 50 years now. I included this picture on the left because the computer is all around that gentleman too, but it's different. You needed that whole room to have a computer. I live up the street from the Computer History Museum, and I've stood in the room that was a computer back in the 70s. And if you take your thoughts back to the history of computing, let's see where we got. We went from a mainframe you could only access at a university to a room with a computer at most major offices. We had terminals at people's desks. We had personal computers. We get laptops. Now you can bring your computer different places. That leads us to point of sale devices. We've got computers right at the cash register. And now, of course, we've all got a computer in our pockets, on our wrist, and computers are coming to glasses. They're coming right to our vision as well. Augmented reality is the natural next step in computer hardware because this is the moment we get to take computing out of the shiny rectangle entirely. We've made that rectangle smaller. We've made it easier to carry around. Augmented reality is the first time we take the power of computing out of that shiny rectangle, out of that phone or that laptop, out of that screen, and we put it in our surrounding world. And that surrounding world is where the hard work is happening on construction sites, oil rigs, and manufacturing facilities. That's why augmented reality is the watershed moment for computing in these environments. And it's specifically 3D augmented reality, the AR that can understand those spaces. So we've got 151% CAGR projected through 2026. There's a lot of unsolved problems out there that are relying on these new capabilities. But we already rely on augmented reality. You might not realize it, but even if you're not a Pokemon Go player, you're probably using it already. When I'm out on the weekend and I'd like to grab a quick lunch, I can pull my phone out and a map comes up that shows me where I am relative to my surroundings. And all around me, I can see the restaurants, the shops, whatever I might need to find. I can get directed to them just by tapping, and my phone understands where I am in the physical world, and it can show me on my screen where I need to go. BIM is augmented reality. Some of you folks might be familiar with BIM already. If you're not, that's building information modeling. And if you're in a building that was built within the last 10 or 15 years in the United States, I can almost guarantee you BIM was involved in that process. If you've heard of the product Autodesk Revit, that is a BIM editing application. Building information modeling is the idea that a 3D model of a building doesn't just have to contain the polygons for where the walls are going to go. It can contain parametric data about what the wall is made of, where it's procured, who's paying for the sheetrock, how much it costs per linear foot, who's responsible for installing it and when. And now that completely built out version of BIM is still on the horizon for a lot of projects. Most of the time, you're getting about 2/3 of the way there, or you're really still just working with a CAD model. But that thinking is already in play in the industry, and the big commercial projects already rely on BIM. In fact, there are projects that turn around the constructed BIM model as a tool for facilities management when the project is over. So now you can look at your BIM model to find out when the HVAC returns need to be maintained, when air filters need to be replaced, who's responsible for procuring new parts for the water system. That is augmented reality. But what's missing is the ability to bring that into our space in an immersive way. Well, it was missing until very recently. So just like you used to only be able to look down at that mini map on your phone to direct yourself, now you've got the ability to hold up your phone, and that 3D understanding of your surroundings can give you visual walking directions through the space. Now, augmented reality devices can bring the data of the BIM model into your space. And I'll get into that a little bit more. There's a simpler example there where we're looking at graphic content. But think of that parametric data. Think about that information about who's installing that sheetrock. How can we bring that into the space too? And how can we bring information from the space back to that model? That's the power of interactive 3D AR. And that's mandatory for the problems that we're solving on construction sites, facilities, oil rigs, extreme environments. Think about this. Where's the computer going to be on a construction site right now? If you walked out to your nearest apartment build, where are you going to find all the computing power? Well, there's going to be some in people's pockets. There's going to be some tablets. But for the most part, it's going to look something like that. You're going to have a computer in the field office where folks go back to interact with computing. Maybe your project is using digital project management. So your superintendent goes back to the trailer in order to upload change orders and requests for information from the architects. Maybe you even have a BIM model on your project. So there's a BIM rig in that field office. But again, you're going back there to interact with it. Maybe you've got a tablet that has some access to that information as well. But ultimately, that computing power is locked up within that shiny rectangle. So I found an awesome quote researching this presentation that described AR for the field as the leap over the last 100 feet. And 2/3 of companies working on augmented reality right now are focused on industrial, non-consumer applications. That last 100 feet from the computer, wherever it is, in the field office, in the pilot's office, in the central management of the facility, and bringing that power out that door and all over the site or that facility. That's mandatory. The only way we're going to solve these problems is with world scale 3D computing. There's 3 key tools that we get in our toolbox with 3D augmented reality. The first one is perception, that ability to see our surrounding space with 3D sensors. The second is display, that power to draw information into our space in a way that understands things in 3D. And it's mobility, the fact that we can take those 2 powers anywhere in our space. And in fact, thanks to the power of the internet and remote communication, we can even bring people who aren't holding or wearing that device with us too. And these three key pillars, they're kind of pillars. They're more like a triangle. It's a triangle brace. Each part gives the other two power. It's not enough to have just one of these. You need to have them all together. That's what 3D AR does. It gives us all that power in one package. Perception. It lets us understand the 3D world. So you're in the XR community, you might recognize this image. This is a LiDAR scan of a living room taken off of an iPhone device. So this is the fact that our computers are now able to see the space around us. They can understand that there's framing in front of them, the shape of the hallway, the materials inside the control panel that you're looking at. You can document that in 3 dimensions, save it and reuse it later. You can use it in real time by drawing new content or updating your surroundings interactively. This is the first pillar for AR, and a lot of remote facilities, a lot of construction environments have been using 3D perception for ages, relatively speaking. LiDAR scanning is a really hot business right now. If you go to any construction trade show, every third booth is going to either be a vendor building a LiDAR scanner or selling LiDAR scanning services. It's reality capture. Now, that's just the value of having one pillar that you bring around on a tripod, that one device that does scanning and needs to be manually moved through the environment. Just that ability to statically capture the space in 3D has created so much economic value and opportunity. So what happens when we can combine that with the other two pillars? Display is the next one. This is what everybody thinks about when you think of AR. You think about throwing on a HoloLens and seeing a 3D environment in front of you. Right here, I had to include a screenshot of the HoloLens app on the IMAJION collaboration platform. So right in front of me, that's a view of a superintendent using IMAJION on a job site. They have a 3D menu floating in front of them that follows them around the space. They've taken a measurement here right in their space. So this is where that gets back to the fact that you need the pillars together. A 3D display is handy. I could look at a 3D movie. I could visualize a BIM model or a CAD model of part of my facility. But the real power is when I can fit that content into my environment, when I can measure those beams in front of me, when I can place a note on a beam in front of me and say, this beam is a problem and it needs to be resolved tomorrow. And I can schedule that back through a connected system because I'm not just wearing a nice pair of glasses, I'm wearing a computer, a connected computer. So the display is critical, and it's the most obvious element, but it's worth giving a whole pillar to. And last up, it's mobility, computing wherever you need it. And I mentioned early on, one reason I wanted to give this presentation on the conference today is because the mobility element of AR is accelerating faster than ever before. In fact, I'd say it's probably the biggest limitation. The display on the HoloLens is pretty dang great now. It's big. Your iPad, your iPhone, they've got great LiDAR scanners. We've got good 3D displays. What needs to keep getting better is the accessibility of this hardware in the field, and it's going to keep getting better. There are exciting devices coming from vendors like RealWare, Third Eye, and of course, updates happening to platforms like the HoloLens 2. You can take the HoloLens 2 onto a container ship at sea that's moving, and it's going to work. And I saw that news right when the call for speakers for this presentation came out, and I thought, what could you build with that? Here's a world that I've been completely external to, and there's enough demand there that Microsoft has built this update just to enable AR in that space. So there's an unlimited world out there that has never had access to the computer in an effective way before. And the mobility of wearable and portable AR platforms has changed the game for what we can offer in those environments. The simple answer is perception, display, and mobility, those key pillars, they tell us that 3D AR is mandatory for field and facility computing. Look, when we started IMAJION, the #1 bit of advice I got in the first 6 months was, oh, don't sell anything tech-wise to the construction industry. Those folks don't use technology. And look, there's been some really successful 2D screen applications like Procore that have proven that assumption wrong. Folks in construction are ready to use a computer. But beyond that, it asks the question of, why has it been so tough to drive adoption of the computer? I know a lot of construction professionals. They're tech-savvy folks. They know how the internet works. They want the latest iPhone. They've got cool tech at home. But what's wrong on the job site? The computer has been missing these key features. The job site around us is a 3D complex environment. It's a living, real place. Our computers need to be able to see that and understand it. They need to be portable in that environment, and they need to be able to tell us and show us things within that environment. It's not just enough to have a digital version of a clipboard that I carry around on a glowing screen. It's not enough to just have a VR headset in the trailer I can throw on to look at the BIM model. It's not enough to have a LiDAR scanner that can capture my environment so I can look at that model later. I need all those capabilities together in one package. Now I can access software that can really empower me in that remote environment. So I've got a few case studies on how the power of augmented reality, 3D augmented reality specifically, can add power to the field. And one thing that I do want to touch on before we get here is some of the other devices that have existed that have kind of led us towards this approach. Google Glass is a great example. These RealWare's HMT1, those devices you would call a wearable tablet. It's got the mobility element. Sometimes they even have the display element, but there's been a piece of the triangle missing. We have devices that we can wear around a space and can show us a floating display. We've got devices that we can carry around and grab a 3D scan, but we need them together. So when you're thinking about 3D AR, take your mindset beyond those early stage AR devices, those wearable tablet computers, and remind yourself that you have all three pillars now. Put your mindset in modern thinking, in the power that we have in our toolbox today. And this is a great example of the kind of technology that's powered by those three pillars. So right here, this is 5 different examples of companies taking different approaches to the last 100 feet of the BIM model. You might have heard of some of these. There might be some that are new to you. I'd also say I'm happy to talk with you more about any of these solutions if you'd like to learn more after the presentation in Q&A or further on. And of course, my company is on the next slide. But right here, this is one of the use cases that I heard about first off when we were introducing AR to construction. Folks would always ask about being able to view their model in the field environment. If you show a HoloLens to a construction professional, they're going to think, hang on, I have to look at plans in the office all day. What if I could just do that out on site? So what you're looking at here, these are all companies that take different approaches to solving that last 100 feet. They've got different values. VisualLive, recently acquired by Unity, an example of the kind of exit that's on the table for startups in the 3D AR AEC facility space. VisualLive can take your 3D CAD model or BIM model and overlay it onto your job site in 3 dimensions visually. So you get exactly what you see in that screenshot. And if you've been to any AR or construction trade show in the last couple of years, there's a good shot you might have used their demo. And I also have to give VisualLive some credit for creating a hard hat adapter for the HoloLens 2 to the MSA V-Guard hard hat, which a lot of our own customers are using. Trimble Sight Vision is a great example of a product that solved the hardware problem. That product existed prior to LiDAR sensors coming to the iPhone and the iPad, but it's got its own sensor. And in fact, Sight Vision can achieve accuracy beyond what is possible for other solutions right now. So AR is still a game of compromises. You're choosing one compromise or another. One of the articles I link at the end of this presentation quotes Jennifer Seward at Pepper Construction. She's a leader in the space right now for adopting AR in the AEC environment. And her primary criticism or critique for AR tech in that article was the tolerances of its understanding of the space. So now that we've got basic 3D understanding from the computer, we just want better 3D understanding from the computer. Sure, you can get me a 6-inch accurate overlay, but I need a centimeter accurate overlay if I'm going to drive screws with it. So Trimble Sight Vision actually can achieve very precise tolerances because it works in conjunction with Trimble's geospatial information systems. You can see the sensor mounted on it right there. Gamma AR, that's another example of an application that can overlay your Revit models, your BIM models into the space. Gamma and ICT Tracker are both particularly interesting because they involve some of the other parametric data of the BIM model. ICT Tracker at the bottom right there lets you actually register that duct right there, that was installed this morning, or that wall over there, that's getting postponed to next week. So thinking back to the parameters in the BIM model, that greater, richer amount of information than just what I'm looking at, there's an example of how AR can connect us to more than just the visual. It can be a great visual tool to access information that would have been harder to get to otherwise. Instead of going back to the trailer and surfing through the paperwork to figure out which particular duct I was looking at during my site walk, I can hold up my phone and tap on it and say, that's the one, that's what's late today. And Argyle at the bottom left there is a new startup out of Portland. They've got a completely different approach to BIM model visualization on the site. Rather than recoloring the model, they actually wireframe it, and their focus is on capturing as much of that rich parametric data as possible. So rather than giving you, they actually kind of look past that visual mock-up element. Rather than giving you a highly detailed, high fidelity visual view of your environment, they give you a very tightly toleranced wireframe overlay with access to that key data. So the point is here, we've got 5 different companies that to some regards are looking at similar use cases, similar products, but there is space for all of these innovations in the market right now. A rising tide floats all boats, and it's a choppy sea. We've been building buildings the same way for a very, very long time, and the computer is only just impacting that field work in the biggest way possible now. And another case study for us here, something completely different from the notion of that 3D visualization, remote collaboration. So think about this not as jumping the last 100 feet. This is like jumping 1,000 feet, 1,000 miles in a second. There's multiple companies, including IMAJION, who have discovered that augmented reality isn't just a great way for one person out in an environment to have those 3 pillars, those 3 key tools, but that remote computing lets multiple people use those 3 tools. And just like the display makes the mobility more useful and the mobility makes the scanning more useful, having your stakeholders involved in the conversation makes augmented reality, especially 3D augmented reality, that much more powerful. And I actually know there are some other talks going on during the conference specifically around use of augmented reality for remote communication, for talking with remote spaces. So Cognitive Spark, Remote Spark, targeted at government facilities, highly secure environments, useful for seeing through that HoloLens into the space. Dynamics Remote Assist, you might have seen that before. It's like a Skype call or a Teams call through your HoloLens with remote markup. And the IMAJION collaboration platform, built by our company as a tailor-made remote meeting solution for the construction industry. So we looked at what you do on the job site, walking through the field office and looking at the plans together, or huddling around an iPad out on the site, flipping through drawings, walking the site and snapping photos of problems, maybe taking out your laser pointer and telling the superintendent what you have to ask about, documenting the work you have to do at your desk later that day. And we brought that into an augmented reality environment. So our client app uses those 3 key pillars. It uses the scan of the environment to let the local user place markup like measurements and pins. It uses the display to put that content in the environment and to include content like your drawings floating holographically. And it relies on mobility because it brings that experience throughout the job site. It makes your site walk a video call. And the secret sauce is our precision remote markup. So using the web call, we give the remote team members that power to reach into the space and use those 3 pillars. You've moved your view to what I needed to see. You've got a 3D display, and I can click on the video and make a marker wherever I want. I have an AR laser pointer. And IMAJION's key twist is that we offer that in pixel perfect precision, regardless of how many people are connected or your latency on your connection. So take those 3 pillars and bring them to more folks than just that person on the job site. And I'm sure you can imagine how these use cases could integrate well with those 3D visualization use cases. If you could look through the view of the device out in the field and click on that BIM model and update a parameter. I'm the architect and I need to tell you that that material's wrong. It should be this one instead. So might be a nice time to mention IMAJION is working on a partnership with Argyle right now to offer that functionality. But my bigger point is the old rules of computing still apply to some extent as well. The biggest value to our consumers, the biggest value to our users isn't just going to be what we can individually offer. It's going to be the integrated value of those 3 key tools in the toolbox, along with all the applications that can be built with them. Hey, Photoshop's handy, but it's much more useful that I could take a Photoshop document and bring it into PowerPoint as an image and show it to you today. Likewise, sure, it's great to look at the BIM model out on the job site, and it's great to hold a video call out on the job site. We ought to be able to do them both together in a richly interactive way. And it's one reason why I'm excited that platforms like Unity are driving this new revolution for AR because of their focus on cross-platform functionality and integration. So we're getting close to the inspiration part of our presentation here, which will lead shortly into Q&A. So my point here is, folks, our 3D future, it's unlimited. What I've got in front of me here, this was the easiest part of researching my presentation because these are all things that don't yet exist. I just had to look up some cool mock-ups and prototypes of projects being built with 3D AR. But the challenging part was I had to make sure each of these did rely on those key pillars. You can see some examples here of looking through devices in a way that richly understands the surroundings. So more than just using that 3D scanner to let you drop a pin and a ruler, using that 3D scanner to understand what you're looking at, to know that's an engine compartment and you're going to do steps 1 through 5 here, or to say you're looking at a robotic arm in a factory and I know there are 4 IoT sensors connected to that arm. I'm going to call up to the database and bring down the latest information. So the intent of this slide is to set our minds beyond those 3 key tools. Like, we've got those 3 key tools in the toolkit. We've got mobility, display, and perception. That's great. But it's a computer. It can integrate with the other tools in our other toolkits as well. Tools like machine learning and AI. Tools like the Internet of Things. That's what you're seeing in front of you here. In fact, the one in the bottom left is a real prototype. Somebody set something up where you could throw a HoloLens on, look at the desk in front of you, and see the latest information from those IoT devices geospatially mapped to their location in your view. So think about facilities management. Think about that BIM model, that digital twin that contains all the IoT devices in my facility, that is smartly connected to my HVAC system, to the water system, to the heating system, and how a device that can bring all that data spatially into my environment and show it to me could be such a powerful tool for the facility manager. Now I can grab my iPad and walk the facility and see in a second what needs upcoming maintenance or what's all good to go. The three-dimensional future gives us new capabilities we've never had before, and we can only start to imagine what we can build next. So as we wrap here, what's AR doing in the field right now, and what's it going to do tomorrow? There's one more startup I had to call out here. Hyperframe is a great example of work instructions through augmented reality. You look at a QR code in a steel beam, and then it shows you exactly in your environment where that beam needs to be placed. So it's a good example where the BIM model is involved, but it's just a tool for that value. Ultimately, what it's doing is providing the 3D record of where that material needs to go on the job site. And Hyperframe is using the capabilities of the HoloLens to know where the user is relative to that record and to show them where things need to go. And that's a tool that you can try out right now. 20% of facility managers are using AR today at this moment, and close to 3/4 of them expect to implement it in the next 2 years. Now, I'm hoping after getting through these slides, 100% of facility managers in this audience are expecting to adopt AR. But the point is, this is coming around the corner. Folks are recognizing the potential value of those 3 key tools used in the environment that needs them for effective computing. 3D AR multiplies the value of augmented reality as we already know it. Google Glass for the enterprise has had a very successful business as a remote support tool out in the field. There are folks using the RealWare HMT1 on job sites and facilities all around the world right now to look at flat floating work instructions and to share their view with remote support. Take that value and bring it into 3 dimensions. Take that remote support meeting and make it an effective 3D interactive conference. Take that floating schematic of work instructions and overlay it on my surrounding environment. That's the power of 3D AR. We can look at what we've had from the computer, we can look at the first gen of AR, and we can look ahead and see this massive opportunity. And one thing I want to focus there is, I haven't talked a lot about form factor in this presentation. I touched on the fact that form factor is important for mobility. They need to be easy to wear and to move around your environment, or easy to put in your pocket and hold up, like the iPad or the iPhone. But value is what's most important. That form factor is key because it drives that valuable mobility. If this stuff is good enough, it doesn't need to look that cool. I don't know about you folks, but I don't find the hard hat and the glowing safety vest the most fashionable outfit in the world, but I wear one on a job site every time I go anyway, because it's mandatory. It keeps me safe. And augmented reality is going to make our sites and facilities safer too. It's going to reduce our head counts because not as many people will have to be there. It's going to reduce our rates of error and mistakes because we're going to be more effective at our work in the field. It's going to make us more effective, we're going to enjoy our work more, and we're going to be safer doing it. So it's going to be mandatory once it's valuable enough. We have to build sharp tools, not shiny objects. And I think that's been one of the biggest pivots that's happened in augmented reality and mixed reality for the workplace since I started out with this around 2016, 17. You might have noticed how simple the IMAJION UI looks. And that's because we got repeated feedback. Get rid of those animations, take out that cool thing. I need this to be simple and safe when I'm out on the environment. So while we're using AR, we need to make sure we understand the environment we're bringing the computer to. Some of the rules are different than they were before. And what's most important is that these tools get the job done in an effective way. Those 3 tools, those 3 key pillars, they are what we need to get the job done effectively. So if you have them, you don't need to dress it up too much. You just need to provide the most clear and efficient path to value. So my question to everybody attending today is, how are you going to build better with 3D augmented reality? And that's a loaded question because build means a lot of things. Are you going to build your next project better with 3D augmented reality, improving your safety outcomes by reducing your head counts and rates of error, helping your team members collaborate better, returning personal time to folks who would have been watching a cement pour at 7 p.m. but can be home having dinner with their families instead? Are you a software developer? Are you going to leave this presentation and call up your cousin who works in oil and gas and start asking about what's giving him headaches on the job every day? Are you an innovator or a decision maker? Are you going back to the office today and calling up your VP of solutions and saying to her, look, we need to start figuring out how augmented reality and 3D augmented reality fits into our organization's growth plan? Maybe you're an influencer. You're going to hop online after this and start posting about how exciting AR is. You're going to find 10 different examples that I didn't even include in this presentation of other exciting startups and post them online. Maybe you're a VP of construction and you're going to call me and set up a demo for IMAJION when this presentation is over. One way or another, you've got an opportunity. 3D AR can change your life and the way you do your job right now. And you can help us all change tomorrow with the power of 3D augmented reality too. You have the tools. Those 3 tools are in your toolkit too. Tools like Unity Engine and Unreal are on the table, and you could use those to build and prototype what's coming next. It's not too late, folks. We're only just beginning. This is the best opportunity we've ever had to change the world with computers. We've got the ability to bring the computer to places that have never been able to make great use of it before. So this brings me to the moment where I will hand things back over to my esteemed moderator, Ruthie, to take us through Q&A. I will point out, you are free to contact me at adrian@imajion.com. Find me on LinkedIn. We'd love to talk about anything I talked about in this slideshow today, and of course about my own company. If you'd like to see a demo, you can ping me directly or head to our website at imajion.com. And I will post these slides to the Discord channel as soon as we hang up here today. I've included some other articles that I didn't source directly in this presentation, but that are great to read about. And in fact, that quote from Jen at Pepper did come from one of those articles. And my speaking notes for all of these slides include some of the bullets on what I talked about, as well as the sources for statistics and quotes. So thank you all for watching. Would love to answer any questions. Happy to get into Q&A.
Awesome. Okay, so we do have some questions. I have some, but then people put some in the chat, so I'll save mine for the end. So Diana asked if, or she kind of asked, I don't know if you have the industry information, but she asked what the average cost was to develop a construction AR app like some of the ones that you talked about today.
So the good news is it keeps getting cheaper because a lot of the development work has gone towards the platform. And that's been both from startups building tools, as well as from the platform providers. So when we started IMAJION, we had the HoloLens 1, which was an x86 device. It was like a netbook you wore on your head. Now we've got the HoloLens 2, and Unity's got support for the .NET standard. Things have gotten a lot simpler. We raised about $4.5 million building IMAJION. We've received feedback from corporations that they would estimate the cost of our project internally between $20 to $25 million. Now, that said, we're a startup company in our 5th, 6th year of operation here. Your opportunity to build something today can start much cheaper and much smaller. The first prototype we built in IMAJION cost what it cost to buy a HoloLens and a commercial license to Unity, and we didn't buy that till after we were supposed to. So you've got an opportunity to build right now. This is still a space where an enterprise play is going to wind up costing a few million in venture capital, but I will point out VisualLive never raised a public funding round. They bootstrapped their company entirely from private funding internally and from revenue. So it can be done.
Wow. Well, that's good news for anybody who's watching, who's like me, who's just an opinion haver, who's now like, what construction people do I know? What problems can I solve? And, I think that's how a lot of us are in this space. We just want to solve the problems. We have another question regarding what IMAJION uses. Do y'all use Unity or Unreal as a middleware?
Absolutely. We use Unity as a middleware, and I would be happy to do a follow-up conversation about some of the architectural decisions we made. I always tell folks we didn't architect our application like a game. We built it like a boring old .NET line of business app, And then we use Unity to abstract the complicated 3D bits, the drawing of polygons and moving of animations. So that's an example where things can get cheaper. Unity didn't have the resources we needed to do that when we built our MVP. Now you can download Unity and you can be running a 3D AR app off your iPhone in about an hour and a half. So we're using Unity as middleware. One reason we did that is Unreal simply didn't run on the HoloLens when we started our company. These days, I'd say it's up to your decision. One thing I'll mention is there is a Unity integration package of IMAJION's tech available. So if you get started on that and you want to include remote AR collaboration, you can give us a ring.
Awesome. Let's see here. Now, this wasn't a direct question, but I kind of extrapolated it based on some of the conversation back and forth between some of the viewers. But just, I guess, maybe on a personal, professional level, how important do you think cross-platform development is for the future of the interactive 3D AR space?
Absolutely. I would say it's pretty critical. Now, it's a little tough to say that this early on because platforms are so emerging and it's still a game of compromises. You're choosing between a batch of compromises from one platform or another. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We've got some really awesome capabilities now. But you just can't do all the same things on the HoloLens 2 as you can on an iPhone and vice versa, whether you've got the LiDAR iPhone or not. So I think cross-platform compatibility is key right now, especially when it comes to access to what you're doing with your app. Like for us, when we started out, we looked at some universal Windows platform exclusive APIs and settled on WebRTC as our video communication technology early on, because that means even if we were exclusive to the HoloLens, everyone could join those calls from the browser on whatever, whether it's a phone or an Android phone or a computer or whatever. Now, things might start to ship. There's a lot of not cross-platform apps on this device that add a lot of value, and there will be an Apple headset before too long. Right. But like I said earlier on, I think interoperability is key. And the rule we found in the last few years is that the most successful apps are the ones that can share across all these platforms as effectively as possible. I don't see any reason that's going to change, especially when so much of the value of the computer is in multitasking, and AR is only just scratching the surface on how our apps can work together. We've got to keep going in that direction, not back up.
Man, I love how like excited you are. It makes me excited. So another question I had was, you mentioned a lot of different kind of points where AR can really make a difference for, construction companies, whether that's at, a higher management level or at the, as we say in the Army, like the boots on ground, right? Boots on the ground level. So do you have, I know there's probably like numerous ones, but maybe some top key performance indicators, like some KPIs that you look at in terms of measuring success with a customer, whether that's, like you said, less accidents, more, less, back and forth between the site and the office, things like that.
Absolutely. For us, we base it all around our key use case. Our key is that construction site meeting that would have been held physically. So we've actually got a cost calculator on our website that folks can use to estimate their savings. And after a pilot or our first project with a customer, we'll take them back to that calculator and start doing the arithmetic on what was saved. So, for example, we had a recent project in the Pacific Northwest where just one superintendent who previously would have been, or more of a corporate project manager, previously would have been going to that site on a weekly basis in the car, holding a site meeting and leaving, did it on IMAJION instead. And we amortized that on a year-long project, that would have saved that company $62,000 just in billable hours. That's before you get to all the work that individual could have done during the time they would have instead be sitting in the car. So for us, ours is a very simple equation. It's what did we save you in terms of time and effort that would have been spent in travel and coordination? And then beyond that, hey, how'd your delivery do? Did those RFIs get completed faster? Did those punch lists get resolved sooner?
That is fantastic. Okay, we have more questions than we have time. So Adrian, definitely connect with him. I have already connected with him over on LinkedIn. If I know, like I said, we have more questions than we have time. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to him directly since he's already advertised himself as an available resource. And then maybe Adrian, you could probably take a scroll through some of the YouTube comments yourself and maybe comment back to those people that we weren't able to get to. But I just wanted to say thank you again so much for being here. Like I did not realize that when I woke up today, I was going to get excited about the future of AR and construction. Like I expected you to be interesting, but now I'm excited.
It's a really exciting space to be in. We all get to make holograms for a living, and look, I'm a little spoiled with it. I love working in construction. This is an industry where when the job is done, you didn't just wrap up a PowerPoint presentation or a great looking PDF. You finished a project that's going to impact people's lives potentially for more than 100 years. You're going to change the lives of many people if you can change the work that's done on the job site. Not only all the people building that building, but all the people who are going to use it once it's completed. So it's an exciting place to be in, and AR is itself a really thrilling place to be too. So it was really exciting for me to get on here this morning. I do see a stack of comments on the right there. I'll go ahead and address anything we didn't have a chance to get in Discord. I will also be uploading my slides there. So thanks very much, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Adrian. All right. So as I'm sure you already know, we have so many awesome sessions continuing on through today, as well as Thursday and Friday. So be sure to check the agenda or just stick around and see what we've got going next. I'm off to moderate another session, so maybe I'll see you soon.